You're listening to Lunch with the Finance Bunch, bringing money talk you can understand. Good afternoon, everyone, and welcome to Lunch with the Finance Bunch. I'm your host, Miss Charline, and I have my co-host over there, DJ Bander. How you doing?
I'm doing great, Char. How are we feeling today?
Oh, we are doing amazing today.
Yes, yes.
Right? We have such a great subject. And, you know, here's the thing that I love about this topic is that we actually have a guest that's going to come in a little while and actually answer a lot of these questions for our guests. I love that.
Absolutely.
Right? So today we're going to be talking about budgeting, right? And how do you put a budget together? One of the questions that I remember you asking our guest last time she was here was, why is it that Americans average maybe $400 or less in their savings? Remember we asked that question?
It's a huge crisis in this country.
Yeah. And so our guest is going to come on and answer that question. But before we get to that, let's talk about some of the reasons why people may have a budget crisis.
I talk about this all the time.
Right?
You know, one thing I always think that's a big problem, and we've talked about this before, is people, they save last.
Yes.
And they spend first.
That's right.
And that's a huge issue. You know, a lot of times people are like, oh, I'm okay. You know, they take care of their what we call, like, you know, their monthly nut. They got their rent, they got their car payment, they got their bills.
Light and gas, utilities.
They're not, exactly. And then they're not thinking about, you know, 30 days, it's like a lot of time. And you need a lot of money to cover that whole month.
Right.
And what the biggest mistake people make right then is they don't put away everything they should, which, you know, I believe should be at least 10% if you can do it.
It should be. You know, that's the average that they say you should put away every month, but you should put it away first.
Exactly.
That should be when you get your paycheck. And, you know, it's almost cliche when you hear someone say, pay yourself first. But that's what it's meant to do, is pay yourself first. And when you say pay yourself first, that doesn't mean go shopping when you get your paycheck first. It means literally pay yourself first. Have an account somewhere that is not accessible, if you're that type of person, which most people are, that's not accessible, and have 10% of your pay go into that account before you ever see it. Don't ever look at it, act like it's not there. And I think that would help a lot too. What do you think about that?
I agree fully. And another thing that I've always talked about too is it's a real mentality shift.
Yes.
From the excitement of having new products and things that you can purchase and what you can dispose your income versus the excitement that you should feel as you see your accounts grow.
Yeah, that I 100% agree with. And, you know, the momentary pleasure of shopping is just that. It's a momentary pleasure.
Exactly.
It's not long lasting.
Exactly.
You know, and you can't take those new shoes and trade them in for food at the end of the month. And you can't get your car serviced 3 months down the line with the shoes you bought with the 10% you should have saved.
And sometimes, you know, it's about making hard choices. Like, look, you know, you might have to go to that grocery store that's 4 neighborhoods away to get a better price on bottled water than going to your Walgreens that's right down the street.
That's very
because
true.
It's convenient. But guess what? They're charging you like $11 a bottle. Like, you know, people make a lot of times what happens is actually really bad spending choices, and they look like small amounts of money. Like, oh, whatever, $3 extra here, $4 extra here. And then you get to the end of the month and you're like, oh, wait, I'm almost out of money. Why? And it's actually accumulation of all of those decisions that were not really thought through.
Yeah.
So that's a really important aspect as well.
Absolutely. And, you know, I'm glad you mentioned that, because Brittney and I, you know, our lovely Brittney, she and I were talking about this yesterday. And I said, $5 a day.
Yes.
If you saved $5 a day, how much money would you have at the end of a year? Just $5 a day, $5 times 7. You would have $1,680 in a year if you saved $5 a day.
Seriously.
And what do you spend $5 a day on? A coffee, a latte.
Yes.
Right?
Absolutely.
An energy drink.
You know, and another thing that I talk about with my friends, a lot of young millennials that I've noticed, one of their biggest problems, I see a lot of them just spending everything straight out of debit.
Yes.
And you're leaving a lot of money on the table when you do that, because credit cards, yes, is it bad to get into credit card debt? Of course. But if you're responsible and you can learn, one, it's a good skill in life to have, first of all, to just be responsible with your credit. But two, you're, you know, basically every dollar that you spend in just cash or using your debit, you're literally taking 10 cents or 5 cents every time and throwing it in the garbage can.
That's
because
true.
that 5 or 10 cents is credit card points that at the end of the year you can use for gifts, trips. You can also use it to just give you cash.
Yes.
You know, and so people don't understand that, you know, and also, you know, if you use too much cash, you know, it's really easy to overspend and money just disappears. And you look in your wallet and you're like, there was like $600 in there. Now there's $2. I don't even really remember how I got from 6 to 2.
Yeah, but if you do it where it's recorded.
Exactly.
Somewhere, and then you'll know where you're spending your money. And I like that idea of using your credit card. And even if you don't have a credit card yet and you want to use your debit card, look at your statement at the end of the month.
Please.
So you see how much money you spent at the local coffee house, having a sandwich, you know, buying that cute, sparkly item that you purchased that you don't even know where it's at now. You know, those kind of things. We could save so much money month to month that would add up to our overall lifetime. Because if you think about it, $5 a day over 10 years, you know, that's almost $20,000.
Absolutely. You know, and,
just in coffee.
Exactly. People are overspending, you know, get a Keurig machine and get them by the packs at the Ralph's. And, you know, that's how I make my coffee in the morning. And it costs me, I spend $10 for a box of 25 of those little cups.
Right.
You know, and people spend, that's 2 cups of coffee at Starbucks.
That's right.
You know, these are choices that people make, and they add up.
They do. And, you know, another reason I think that we have to be careful in our spending is because our economy has shifted. It's not the economy that we had when I was, you know, what would have been considered a millennial, right?
We always talk about this.
We talk about this, and, you know, the jobs aren't as secure as they used to be. There's not going to be social security.
Yes.
You know, when the millennials get to an age of retirement. So the discipline has to start now so that there is money in place at that time.
Absolutely. We were just discussing this the other night, you know, which was that, you know, a lot of the young generation doesn't remember the time when we had strong unions and
That's
we had
right.
strong labor support. Right. And, you know, that was a time where you didn't quite have to worry as much about these little things because, to be honest, more jobs were paying a living
That's
wage.
right.
So now we have a situation where there's less of a living wage. So in order to excel, you have to be smarter. You have to be tighter with your spending choices so that you can make the money stretch and you can do something with it, including, you know, instead of just leaving the extra money sitting around where you'll be tempted to spend it.
Yes.
You know, I've always preached, you know, trying to open up a brokerage account, some sort of a Roth IRA, and putting $100 a month into that,
Right.
And buying some, you know, some stocks and some bonds, so you can't pull it back out just because you have let's go to Magic Mountain this weekend
Right.
for no reason, and I have it right here. I got the extra $250. So it's true. It's all about choices and understanding that. You know, instead of looking at it like, oh, there's no options for me, you know, opportunity is fleeting. Look at it like, no, I just got to be smarter.
Right. And, you know, options is the name of the game. But, you know, another question that came up from one of our listeners was, how do I get started? Like, I want to do this, but it's kind of like jumping double dutch, right? It's like, how do I jump in? How do I get in the game? And so we have a guest today who's going to help with that, teaching people how to get in the game. She's a financial planner. I've known her for years. This woman is amazing, and she speaks to not just the youth of today and the millennials, but she has a broad scope of financial literacy and what you should do to plan your financial future for everyone.
Yeah, absolutely.
So I think we should bring her in. What do you think?
I think we should do that.
Yes, her name is Brittney Castro, and we're going to bring in Miss Brittney and let her tell us exactly how we should budget for just not today, tomorrow, and for the year, but for a lifetime.
I think it sounds like a great plan.
We'll be right back. So we are back in the studio, and we have our guest, Brittney Castro. And Brittney is a financial wizard. That's what I call her. And she is going to talk to us about some of the questions we had from last time you were on, right? And one of those questions was, how do we budget? How do we get started? So Brittney has a webinar that's going to be coming up. She'll be telling us about too. So how you doing, Miss Brittney?
I'm good. So happy to be here.
Yes.
I feel like I'm the third wheel of your show.
Absolutely.
You are definitely turning into another co-host for us. And we love it because you have the kind of information that our audience wants to hear and does absolutely need. So DJ Bander, we have a bunch of questions to ask Brittney.
Do.
So we need to get started.
So I know last time we had a very interesting discussion, Brittney, about, you know, budgeting, talking about I remember I asked you about how come there's so much financial insecurity with young people. And I was just wondering, like, What has changed for you? And since the last time we talked, are there any new ideas or things that you've been working on in order to help sort of that situation going on with young people, with young millennials around budgeting?
Yeah, I think our team has just been doing a lot of research around statistics. So one thing that we found was 32% of Americans have a household budget. So it's just kind of reminding people they're not alone if they've never budgeting.
That's a scary number, honestly. That's
It
low.
is.
32%
So, like,
out
if-
of 100%.
32%. That means you're saying 70% basically has no
Don't.
budget.
Yeah.
And I think that's okay. And then so that was one thing that we've really been figuring out, like how do we bring it to like a relatable situation? Because I think there's this common misconception around budgeting. It's a diet. It's going to restrict everything. You're not going to have any more fun.
Right.
But even changing that mindset around what a budget is. So I've been teaching a lot of workshops, and recently I've been finding that very smart, savvy people, you know, just even telling them, think of a budget as just a tool, as your friend, not an enemy. You know, you're just tracking money coming in, going out, and what does it show? You know, I think that's like been a difference of, okay, how do we make it even more relatable and practical to people? Because there's all these tips that I have to budget, but there's also the art of money, which is those emotions or the behaviors, the avoidance mentality, you know, the feeling like I'm never going to get better or it's never going to happen for me.
Well, in the introduction, one of the things that I brought up is that a lot of people think budgeting means cutting out something that's essential that they love, that they can't do anymore. But what I was talking to Shar about is that a lot of it is people just making smarter choices about what they buy, like even things like bottled water. Going to a different place to buy your water. You know, people go to, maybe they like to buy it at their local pharmacy or the Walgreens because it's right there at their corner, but they're
it's 3 times
overpaying.
as much,
Exactly. And because they are lazy, they don't want to go, you know, maybe a little further to buy their water in bulk. And so it's like the same product at the end of the day. But I think maybe people have a hard time seeing how a few dollars here, a few dollars there, it adds up at the end of the month, you know?
I think you're spot on, because I think it's all about getting down to the nitty gritty and seeing those spending patterns and then making conscious decisions, not cutting out the fun, but saying, interesting. It looks like I'm overspending on water. Maybe I can order bulk water online and save. So it's not, you're a horrible person, you should feel bad. You know, it's just, awareness, make a different choice.
No, absolutely.
I agree with that. And, you know, in making these conscious choices to do better in our budget, we were also talking about having an account where that first 10% should go, so that it's separate from the money that you are spending on an ongoing basis.
Exactly.
When you're trying to save also, is to like have this separate budget, or not budget, just separate place where you should put your money for savings. And people call it emergency, but that's not I don't like that word. It's just so negative.
Yeah, I think you're right. I think what we call it is cash cushion, because it's a cushion. It's actually for maybe opportunities that come up as well. You want to make a job switch and there's some money in the bank that you can, you know, pay your bills while you're figuring out that transition, or there's an opportunity to travel somewhere spontaneously and you want to take advantage of that. And I think especially in your 20s, the importance of a cushion is so underrated. I mean, I wish I actually would have had more of a cushion in my 20s. I had a cushion, but it wasn't, you know, even like when I started my company, I was in my 20s. So
That's right.
I wish someone would have told me, it's more important to have as much cash as possible in your 20s, because that's when you're figuring yourself out, figuring out what you're going to do, kind of like your career. And then even if it delays the investing a little bit for your future goals, at least it gives you that foundation. So then when you get the solid income and your career settled, you have just all that money now that you can invest and really, you know, grow for the long term. But the cushion account is huge, and whatever it is, 10% 1%, setting it up so it's automatically deducted.
Right. Yes, that we're talking
I'm
about.
telling you, it's impossible to save if it's not automatic.
Yeah.
The discipline involved of saving whatever's left over is so backward.
yeah.
Like it's almost like don't even torture yourself.
Exactly.
Don't set up for failure.
Yeah.
Instead, you almost have to like trick yourself against your own habits.
Right. And don't look at it. Like,
And don't look at
just
it.
let the money come out. Don't even look at it. It's automatic. It's the first 10%. It's a dollar amount. You know how much you make every 2 weeks.
Yeah.
You just take that first 10%.
Put it
and
away.
Just put it away. Just
Well,
let
that's
it come
another-
out as a draft.
Absolutely.
Just don't even look
And
at
sometimes
it.
I one thing I push to a lot of people is sometimes even just getting it out of the bank and putting it into an investment account, whether it be a Roth IRA, or a brokerage account, because then you're one, you're going to get compound interest, and
Right.
two, you're
Yes.
going to be less tempted because it's in another account and you're actually psychologically watching it grow in the market. What I found is my friends who I've gotten and taught them how to invest is what happens is when the money's in the brokerage account, they're like excited to see it growing with the market.
Yes.
And so they're not as tempted to be like, oh, I want to pull this out and just put it back in the bank where it's doing nothing. You
I
know?
think you're so spot on.
That's true.
And even if it's not an investment account, maybe it's just a high yield savings
Yes.
for the cushion.
Correct.
Having it at a separate institution where you have to have a separate login. You're not seeing it in your checking account
Yes.
balance and
Yeah.
tempted to spend it. It is key.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, and it's also about you have to know yourself. Like some people, it's really easy for them to save, and they have a very strong discipline around money. And if you know yourself and you're like, I don't have that, then you have to take those extra steps, right, to make sure that you have that security for yourself. Because I think it comes down to your personality. Everybody's different. You know?
Definitely.
It's
Know
like-
yourself.
Know
Right.
yourself.
Now, I had a question. Do you think that, yes, personality plays a lot into it, and also like, the way you were raised. So it's how you, grew up. If there were people who saved in your family and it was a part of your family culture, it makes it a little bit easier. But for the 70% who, even if it wasn't
Still
their
trying to
family,
process that number.
but yeah, even if it wasn't their family or wasn't, they knew they didn't. You've come up with a system that will help us be more successful, right?
For budgeting,
For budgeting specifically is what I'm talking about.
Yeah. So
Tell us about that.
Yeah, the system that we teach is 50-20-30 rule of thumb. And there's a few other things that we teach once this is set up. But simply put, in financial planning, you have your net income every month, which is after deductions, after taxes. 50% is what is the goal to be using for fixed expenses. So rent, mortgage, utilities. Now, I'm very aware if you live in a big city like LA or New York or San Francisco, that might be a little bit higher, but this is like the benchmark, right?
Totally.
20% is what you're aiming to save for your various financial goals. So that could be putting 10% into a cushion, 10% into retirement, or maybe 5% into a cushion, 5% for extra debt, 10% retirement, whatever it is. That's what we do in our financial planning practice is help
with that.
figure it out based on the goals and where people are at. And then 30% is what we say you can spend on fun. So whether it's bottled water, going out, the number one expense in that category is food.
Oh,
I mean,
absolutely.
it's everybody, this is what we do all day. So we see it. And it's whether you go out to eat or buying groceries. I mean, food is just everyone's number one variable expense. So looking at these numbers and figuring out, okay, what does that mean for you? Sorry, my headset's coming off. And then not getting discouraged.
Right.
So if you can't save 20%, start with 1%. And I think that's like the biggest.
Yeah, just start somewhere.
Yeah,
It's gotta start
because
somewhere.
people really think it's going to take this huge, like even me, I used to think, oh, it takes this huge, but it's day by day, step by step. 1% is so much better than nothing. And honestly, just getting the system set up is more important than the actual numbers, but also looking at that, like we talked about, the budget is your friend. So look, where do you fall in relation to that? Okay, what expenses can you cut out or eliminate, or how can you make more money so these ratios look better for you?
Yes.
So one question that I had is, this is such a sticky topic with some people. I feel like sometimes one of the biggest issues with helping people become more financially literate is there's an insecurity and there's an uncomfortable nature with discussing their own finances.
Absolutely.
And
It's
Charline and I talk
cultural.
about this all the time about how, it's cultural. B, it's like one of those things where, there's a lot of other areas in people's careers and lives that they're happy to get advice from or to talk about stuff from. But then when it comes down to finances, it's like people just sort of like freeze up. So my question is, how do you soften or say like maybe massage the ego of people a little bit in order for them to help themselves? Because I feel like sometimes the biggest problem is that people actually don't take the steps that they need to financially because they just don't want to go to that place where they're like, okay, I'm not really on top of it and I need to.
There's almost shame around money here
so much
in America.
emotion.
Yeah.
This has been a big thing in our content in the business lately. It's talking about that emotional side and the roadblocks, because after doing financial planning for over 10 years, you see, okay, it's great. You can have the best budget, the best investment portfolio, but if you don't feel good about your money or feel good where you're at in relation to it, to me, that's not financial success. You know, you want to have those systems and feel confident and excited. So I think starting with the place of accepting yourself, which is not easy, you know, accepting yourself exactly where you're at. If you have debt, no savings, or, you know, you have savings, but not as much as you want, or, you know, or you're still spending money on that thing that you said you wouldn't spend money on, and you just keep like falling into it. I mean, we're all human. I can relate to this myself. Just because I'm a financial planner doesn't mean I'm immune to things. But I think accepting yourself is so key, because then you say, okay, here I am. Here's what's going on. And now I can move forward. And I really believe until you do that, things won't shift. Right. It might shift for a little bit, but you'll fall right back.
Well, and you also, if I'm sure you know, dealing with your clients, that it's actually not related to your income level.
No,
because
it's not.
I've talked about this before, but it never ceases to amaze me. I have people that I know in my network that make very little money, and
they're successful.
Maybe $30,000, $25,000 if at best, and then I'll be like, so how much you have saved? And I'll be like, oh, wow, very good. That's a lot in the bank. And then I know people who make 5 times that, and they're just like always down to the dime pennies at the end of the month.
Yes.
So do you think that when you deal with your clients, I'm sure it's really important to kind of break down not just the income level, but then where it's all going, right? Do you have a process? Explain to us a little bit of the process, how you break that down with people.
Yeah, we always look at their income, we look at their assets, we look at their goals, and look at the cash flow and say, okay, here are some things that we're seeing. You know, our job is not to tell clients where to eliminate. I think a lot of people want us to say that, but we think it's more important, even if they want us. We'll guide them and tell them recommendations, but I think it's more important they make the decision, because it's their money and no one is responsible for your money.
And it's empowering.
And I could say, eliminate here, but if you're like, no, that's not going to be good for me, like I will not do that, then that wouldn't work.
Right.
But yeah, you bring up a good point. We work with people that have all the money they could ever need, and they still worry about it. Like they still worry about running out. So it's really remembering you're not alone in the moment. You could really embrace, okay, here I am again. I'm still here.
Yes.
It's okay. I'm just making progress. I think that's where consciousness and awareness comes in, because really until you identify your own behaviors or patterns or scripts with money, it's very difficult to change.
Right. Well, I like your approach.
Things needed.
I like your approach, because the thing within what you said that is key for most people is that you're not telling them what to do, and you're not shaming them, and you're not making them bad or wrong. You're saying wherever you are, okay, let's get comfortable. You're there. Let's just be there. Okay. So we acknowledge that. Now we can move forward from here. Totally. It's okay. Right. And I think that here, especially here in the United States, that's the only place I've ever lived, but visiting other places, I noticed that here in America, there's so much shame around money and finance. People would rather talk about sex than they would about their financial situation, and so to be able to help people break that sense of shame or uncomfortableness around the very thing that's going to be able to secure them in the future is phenomenal. So I absolutely love that. I have a question around, we talk about finance and the different compartments that we should put our money in. What do you see is one of the biggest mistakes people make just across the board with where they put their money?
Interesting. Lately, I think we've seen a lot of people just not take advantage of investing. So they might have an adequate cushion, and they have too much in a cushion, right? So then they're not growing their money, getting compounding interest. Or like we have clients that have a home, funding their retirement accounts and still have surplus. So then we say, okay, well then maybe you want to buy another home or keep growing, It's like also encouraging them to keep going. And, even if you don't have that money, like not investing or not putting that time into learning how to set money aside is actually the biggest mistake. And I think it's just the avoidance mentality of, I didn't learn this growing up. My parents didn't teach me. I didn't learn it in school. I feel bad that I'm still doing these things that I know aren't really good with my money, all that shame and guilt. But really that just prevents you from then taking that first step, which I honestly, if you could take the first step, that's really all it takes sometimes.
So when we come back, I love that. So when we come back, we're going to talk more about taking that first step with Brittney. How's that?
Sounds good.
Yes.
We'll be right back.
Hello, everyone. I'm DJ Bander. With me always is Char. You're listening to Lunch with the Finance Bunch here on Dash Talk X. And we're with Brittney Castro asking a few questions about budgeting and financial literacy in this day and age. Thank you for being with us, Brittney.
Thank you.
Quick question. I know you have a webinar coming up.
Yes.
And this is something that I know is your passion, something that you work very hard on. It's something that I think a lot of people really need to learn about and understand moving forward. Why don't you tell us a little bit about it and what are your goals with this webinar?
Yeah, so the webinar is April 22nd, 5 p.m. Pacific Standard Time. It's free. So please, if you're interested, sign up. I think this is such a great webinar because what I teach on the webinar is 5 ways to have massive money breakthroughs. So I'm a certified financial planner. I've been doing financial planning for 13 years, worked with thousands of people, talked to tens of thousands of people about money. But what I've learned throughout all of that is it doesn't matter how solid your budget is, your investment portfolio is, your financial plan is, if you don't have the right mindset to match it, one, it's not going to work long term, or two, you'll get all those things but still feel unsatisfied, still feel worried or stressed or anxious with money. And to me, that's not what financial success is. We really like to teach wealth, and wealth means different things for different people. It's not just having all the money in the bank. It's, are you healthy? Are you fulfilled with your relationships? Do you enjoy your work? So it's really defining that and giving people the tools to make those decisions for themselves. So this webinar I'm so excited about, and I hope everybody joins because I just wanted to do something that can help more people. It's free. It's 1 hour. Also, you can ask me your specific questions. And it was just because we were getting a lot of inquiries, and I thought, okay, I can't always go and teach workshops here and there and be everywhere. So here's a chance to tune in online wherever you are in the world, learn some tips or get reminded about things. Because again, even if you feel good about your situation, you can always refine, and it's not a one-time thing. Every year, every month, every quarter, we need to be thinking, okay, how do we feel good, or how do we improve our financial life? So this is the chance. So I'm stoked, as you can tell, about it.
Yeah,
that's really cool.
It's very exciting.
And some people just need validation. They just need to know that they are doing it right.
I love giving that too. A lot of our clients,
am I doing it right?
Yeah, I feel like I'm a coach. I'm so many things. Like we're so many things as a planner. You're a coach, you're an advocate, you're a teacher. But a lot of times I just have to remind people, you're doing great. Even just asking me these questions that you're asking is really cool because you took the time to ask me this, So I think just some extra cheerleading never hurts.
It never, ever hurts. It never hurts.
And I think sometimes, a lot of people see creating wealth as so unattainable, even if they make a lot of money in income, and they don't understand the power that, like, when they save, like if, let's say you make a decent salary, like a low 6 figures, right? And people look at that as like, okay, yeah, maybe I could save 1,000, if they're lucky, maybe 2,000 a month. What I was explaining to my friend who doesn't have a lot of savings, but he has a big income, is like, listen, dude, like, I don't think you understand. if in literally, like if you can save $20,000 to $25,000 a year, which you can with your salary,
Yes.
in 4 years, you could take that money and buy, say, PIMCO bond funds and literally have $1,000 a month coming in for the rest of your life,
rest of
doing
your life.
nothing.
Yes.
Like it's not so difficult to get to a position where you have strong passive income. It's just like making smart choices for a little bit of time.
But you need that coach, if you don't know it on your own, to help you get there. You know,
Yeah.
so it's not so much the lack of the will to do it.
Exactly.
It's the knowledge and the path to get there.
Exactly.
And I think that's where the 70% are. It's more, how do I do it? Because it's not taught in high school. It's not taught anywhere, really. You know, the practicality of financial literacy isn't taught anywhere, except by Brittney.
You've
online,
done these
on this
webinars for
webinar.
a while.
Yeah, I've done webinars for
Right?
over 13 years.
Exactly.
I've taught workshops my whole career.
Right.
That's how I got clients. That's how I got my name out.
Yeah.
So I've just talked to so many people at all different stages. And I tell you, I was at a company last week, you know, a tech company teaching a corporate workshop and very successful incomes. And everyone still like,
Yes.
how do I do better? You know, it's like a constant, you know, is this enough? Can I do better? I love what you just said because it makes it almost so simple and tangible for people. Oh, okay. You know,
1 + 1
okay,
equals
yeah,
2.
exactly.
Yeah.
You see the steps and you
Yes.
see, oh, okay. And you know, another thing that I think is really relevant right now is delayed gratification.
Yes.
And
it
reminding
is.
so true.
ourselves.
Not microwavable, but
It's
delayed
really,
gratification.
I think the biggest epidemic actually
is.
of we all want immediate gratification.
Right
And
now.
I too, me too, I'm not.
Yeah.
But how do you translate savings and investing to just as much fun as spending it right now and getting that dopamine hit
right.
of buying something, you know, because now we don't even have cash. We don't even, it's just clicks, you know, or
Yeah.
transfers, you know, Venmo and online shopping. And even kids, I'm thinking, oh my gosh, parents, you got to get in there with your kids because they don't even understand that you go to work to make money to then click and say, yes, I want that. You know, they're just
Totally.
thinking click, click, click.
Right.
So there's a lot to learn at both generations, of course, but I think just reminding ourselves, like you were saying earlier, ooh, seeing my savings account go up, that's fun. That's more fun now
Exactly.
than
Right.
spending in the
Well,
moment.
and it's like I have friends who've gotten really nice jobs and these huge salaries, and they call me and they're like, "Yo, Bander," I'm like, "What do you think? Should I get like the S-Class Benz or should I get like, you know, like a Porsche Macan?" And I'm like,
Neither one.
Neither. What you should do is save for 4 years, and then your
Right.
bond flow will pay for any car you want for the rest of your life, and you
Exactly.
never have to worry about it. Like it's just simple things like that. Like I think it was really great that you brought up the whole immediate gratification thing, because that's literally the reason why people don't have as much money invested, is because they look at it as like they can't project themselves out a few years. And all of the wisest entrepreneurs and successful capitalists have always been able to think in terms of 3-year plan, 5-year plan, 10-year plan, right?
But people want immediate validation. And so how do you get that immediate validation and security to prove that you are the success that you think you are in your mind?
And that's
is
exactly,
the biggest
Char.
part of it, is that people normally want to show how successful they are to feel validated, right?
Yeah,
And so,
especially with social media.
Especially with social media, it makes it even worse. You know, because it's the pop on Instagram and how do I get more likes, and so they're living this fantasy, you know, and now they get to compare themselves to the lifestyle of the rich and famous because their Instagram profile is right next to someone who is wealthy and famous, right? So now they're trying to live a lifestyle that's not even within their means at this moment.
Yes.
And really the lifestyle of the rich and famous might be momentary too if they're not living more cautiously,
yeah.
you know?
I agree. I
So
couldn't
it just feeds on itself and becomes this outrageous monster. That's why we need you, Brittney.
Yeah, we
Yeah.
need to help the young generation.
Well, DJ Banner is going to be a financial coach pretty soon, right? Like learning from him.
Right?
I appreciate
exactly.
that. So I wanted to shift gears really quickly within the same topic. So one of the issues, of course, we hear about too is like young people are constantly complaining, oh, like there's just not the same job security. There's just not the same options in society. You know, like my grandfather was a union labor organizer, and he was like super involved in a time where, you know, you could have a job, like a construction job, and that would get you like the picket fence, like the nice house. Like you could actually have, there were people there were construction workers with 2 cars. and a nice house and all this stuff. And so what I wanted to ask you is, what are some ways that workers can adjust to this new time where we see less security from, say, unions and those sorts of things? And, does it come down to these, whether it be webinars, people have to just be more careful, right, in terms of how they're doing their spending?
I think, and everyone has to have this entrepreneur mentality where you're diversifying your income streams, no matter how quote unquote secure your job might be.
Right.
Because I'm an entrepreneur, so I've only known that route for my entire working. Like even when I started in high school as a server, so I always knew, if you do more work, you get more tips. If you're nice, I always had this mentality of, okay, make your money. But I think understanding that the best approach is to diversify your income, like you said, even maybe putting money away so you have some bond income here or some real estate income, or you have your job and maybe some side hustle, or you can think that, okay, if this job goes away, could I become a consultant, or what else could I do?
Totally.
Because I think no one can play the victim role. Unfortunately, that doesn't get you anywhere. So you have to own your financial life and own the fact that no one is responsible except for you. So if you just kind of live in this fantasy world where you're going to live or work at a corporation for 40, 50 years and retire, it's not real anymore.
No, it's not. It's not real anywhere here. I don't know about other places. Like I said, I've only lived here, but it's just not realistic here. And I think that a lot of millennials know that, but I think the reality of what to do about it is something else.
I think it's overwhelming.
It's very overwhelming to think that, you are actually responsible for yourself. But here's the good news in that. At least you know it. And when you figure it out, you got it. Because what's happened to a lot of baby boomers is they grew up thinking, this job is going to take care of me. And what's happening to them now is they're being forced to retire, right? And their jobs are going away and their retirements are being negotiated down.
Yes.
So the money they thought they were going to have, they don't have. And the money that they should have been saving, they didn't, because they thought that this cushion that was built into that job isn't as secure as they thought it was. So I think my thought is once the millennials figure it out, they're going to be in a much better position financially than I think the baby boomers were, because they will have figured it out.
Right.
Right?
And I have a lot of friends in their 20s. And one thing that I think why I said it's overwhelming, because it's like you get out of college.
Yes.
I mean, I'm probably on the higher end of a millennial, but you get out of college, you're like, oh my God, there's so many opportunity. I can make money online. I could do this. What do I do? I don't know what to do. And then they just delay. And it's like, just get a job,
right?
Do something. Get one job, learn something, see if you like it, see if you don't like it, and then it'll take you to the next thing. Like if you asked me in college, would you be a financial planner and have your own company? I would say no. I didn't even know what that was. I didn't even know what financial planning was. But I took a job. I realized, okay, here are the things I like, here are the things I don't like. Then I went to like an independent firm. Then I launched my own company. So it was like stepping stones. And you really, I think just getting a job is so underrated. Like start somewhere, learn, build your network, see what you like, see what you don't like, and just kind of go with it. Don't get stuck in this, I got to find my passion. When you're 22, you don't know what your passion is. Just,
get a job and
get
moving. Started.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
I love that answer.
And do what you're good at, right?
And really,
and
do, and find and build a career around something that I like, I know we're both fans of Gary Vee. He mentioned you in his book.
Yes.
And, Gary Vee always preaches, do what you love, because that will keep you from avoiding burnout. If you're, chase the happiness and chase the satisfaction from your work versus just only chasing the money, because you're going to burn out on that anyway. And that's why I call it like the ADD generation. Like these young people who kind of like, they do one thing for a while and then they burn out and they do something else and they do something else, is because they're kind of always just chasing the next hustle,
Yeah, or the glam wears off,
Exactly.
I'll tell.
Because when it boils
it's not
down,
glamorous.
you're
Sometimes it's like you're working. It's a job. Just remember that too. I have a lot of people that are like, oh, you do your dream job, and I go, yeah, I really do. I enjoy. I created a business I like, and I'm grateful. But also at the same time, it's a job.
It's a job.
You know, I've had to come to terms with, if I didn't have this business, I would still be me. I would still be okay in life. I would figure something else out. You know, it doesn't, just because it is a big part of my life, it isn't my life. Like, I don't know. I have a very good separation between.
But you have balance.
I have balance. Yeah, I guess. But that's something I worked on too, because I think in this day and age, like, everyone's like, I got to find my passion. It's like, oh my gosh, just work and get a job and then you'll know.
Scared money don't make no money.
Scared money don't make no money.
That's right.
Hashtag.
That's it.
Right.
Let's keep it real.
Let's keep it real.
And you, and looking at it like, and I like that a lot. You know, and another big part of it is just seeing your own empowerment, not looking at it as like, you know, people that have, you know, they're taking away from people who have not, or like, oh, I don't have money, like there's nothing for me to do, I'm just gonna have like this bad attitude around it. You have to keep yourself in a positive space, right? And keep everybody, you know, around you also, you know, supporting you and understanding your vision for yourself too in your career.
I think so. And the nice part is the internet. So there's lots of mentors.
Absolutely.
You know what, Brittney? We have so many questions from our listeners that want to ask you things. And so we're gonna come back in just a moment and ask Brittney all the questions you want the answers to. We have them right here. So you come back and Brittney will have those answers.
Let's do it.
Yes, we'll be right back. And we are back in the studio with Brittney Castro. And we were just talking about all of these amazing things surrounding your webinar and all the questions you'll be able to answer for everyone that's listening. So we had some specific questions from our listening audience. And so we want to fire these questions at you and see what your expert answers will be. Okay. I am new to budgeting. How should I get started?
New to budgeting. First and foremost, love that you're budgeting. I would say the number one thing is look at that 50-20-30 rule of thumb. So literally sit down right today. List out all your income sources that you're getting for the month. What is that actual dollar amount? Like, you know,
from every source.
Whatever the actual dollar amount is. And then list out every expense that you have in the month. Now, some of these will be fixed, which are, you know, pretty easy to figure out. There are those recurring committed ones. The variable or fun expenses might need a little bit more work. You might need to look at your bank transactions for the past 30, 90 days and see, okay, where's my money going? But, you know, stay in there, list them out. If you're doing any savings, great. List what your savings amounts are and look at this number and say, okay, is there enough income coming in? Here's where the bills are. Here's where I'm spending on everything else. And then look at it and try to remove yourself from the situation. I always say, like, it's so much easier to look at someone else's situation and have no emotional connection.
Yes.
But when it's your own money, you just have, oh God, you know, you're like anxious. Or judging yourself because you're spending too much in this category or whatever it is. Look at it and just say, okay, is this good? Can I make it better? How do I save more? So really just get in there and write all this out.
Well, it's interesting you said that because another one of the questions is, and it's something that I think is so important. It's, you know, I don't know how to talk to my spouse about money or girlfriend, boyfriend. You know, where do you suggest I begin? And I always say with this, it's like, it's a really big issue if you're not on the same page with your partner around money.
You better find that out early though.
Yeah, like you might have to do a little snip there. So.
For real. Because if they're not in if you're not in the same.
Where the scissors at, you know what I mean? So what do you think around that issue?
So here's the thing. I think in money and relationships, it's very sensitive because it's not only your universe, it's their universe and all these past experiences. So one thing I always tell couples is start by asking, like, how were you raised with money? What did your parents teach you about money? Or because it kind of takes the pressure off of, hey, how much do you have in your bank account? Like, what's your debt? How much money do you make? Those questions are a little bit jarring sometimes, especially if you've never even talked about money.
You'll be like,
and now all of a sudden you're just like, it's almost like you feel automatically defensive and it's hard for somebody to be open when you're kind of like that.
Yeah.
So learning about the history, you know,
Very
what are your
important.
values, or even just asking about future goals. And then, you know, with practice and time, you can say, okay, you know, maybe we should talk about budgeting or how we're spending our money. Here are some things that are annoying me or bugging me, and always bring it back to yourself. I think is good because look, you can't change anybody, but you can just say these things are important to me, or this is what I'm feeling insecure about. These are my weaknesses with money, and I'm afraid to almost like tell you because I think you're gonna judge me.
Well, he has the scissors out. DJ Band already said he has the scissors out.
Well,
clip.
Yeah, but I mean, but what I mean by that, this is
I
real.
know.
Yeah, you know,
Scary.
yeah, I'm gonna be icy, but it's not about. It's not, to me. Here's what I say though: it's not about how much somebody makes at all.
It's how
because you
what they
can
do with
you
it.
could have somebody with a huge salary, and you're gonna be your worst nightmare to marry financially. And then you
Yes.
could have somebody who makes like a small salary, and they're gonna be the best influence on you ever because of
Yeah.
watching their savings. So for me, it's not about how much you make; it's about. Also, I feel though it's like if you can't have those conversations on a casual level, like for me, I just get right into it. Like when it comes to like people on dating, because it's like you got to know that, you know, you got to have an honest, like I love talking to my girl about money because it's like you have to be able to have an honest conversation. You're gonna have that like down the line when you're really invested with somebody, and then it's like that's like the worst time to have a conversation about that. So
I agree. The values is
Definitely.
what I'm hearing. You want to be on the same page with money
Value
values
systems.
with people.
yeah, you know, and people who just, you know, see it as they take it seriously. I don't think it's about how much you have.
No.
It's about how serious you take it, because somebody who might make like I said before, like somebody who can make a lot of money who's your partner, and you think, oh, I'm doing great because this person, but that person's reckless with their money,
Right.
and you end up getting into trouble because of that.
I would say after working with couples for so many years, one of the biggest things that I think is a stressor is when one person completely avoids the subject.
Exactly.
And that is like
Red flag.
in general, if you're just avoiding something in a relationship, it's like a vacuum, right?
Right.
It's like, oh, it's so draining. They
Yeah.
don't want to get on the same page and sit down and budget with me, or they don't want to meet and talk about the financial plan with you, you know, and it's like very draining when you're just like, check out, like peace, you know,
DJ Banda
even,
said red
and that's
flag.
what I'm saying. Like, even
Red
if it's
flag
like,
with the red drapes. You know what I'm saying?
I don't know, I'm learning so much.
Okay, and here's another question.
Let's
How
do
do
it.
I manage paying down debt and still save for my financial goals?
I
Good
love
one.
this question because there's no magic formula, but you got to find some sort of balance where you're saving at the same time.
Yes.
And especially that cushion we talked about, get it to a few $1,000s. I mean, technically you should have a cushion of 3 to 6 months of your expenses, but sometimes the cushion goes down, so you got to rebuild. But without a cushion, when you're paying all the debt, you know, if an emergency happens or something comes up, then it's like
You're
no
still messed
cushion to
up.
fall back on. So it's that vicious catch-22 with debt reduction. So even if it takes a little bit longer, having a cushion. So finding that balance, maybe, I don't know, 50-50, you know, 50 goes to your savings, 50 toward extra debt.
So this is another question that somebody asked, and I love this question so much because it's something that I get into conversation with a lot of my friends in the corporate world, which is, how do I ask for a raise?
Yes.
And how do I ask for proper compensation? Because
Yeah.
what's so deep is there's so many people I know who are such hard workers, and like we discussed earlier with the fall of the unions, it's like you're
There's
basically
no protection.
there's no protection. Like people are paid whatever they're paid, and they're so afraid of being fired or being scorned by their supervisor that they don't just take the step to be like, hey, like, you know, I know what this job's worth. Like I've helped out with friends. Like I've literally looked up their position on Google and saw that like the average salary for their position was like $20,000 more than they make. And it's like, yo, you know, you should use that with your boss. Like, look, I know I'm being underpaid for this position. What do you think?
Yeah,
like,
that's a great
Definitely
question.
do your research. So find out what average salaries are for your skill set, your position. Also understand inflation in America is like 3-4%. So if your income's not going up 3 or 4% per
You're not
year,
making
I
any
mean,
more
that's
money.
like right there.
that's
you know?
another thing that I love
People
that you
always
brought
say
that
like,
up.
I got a raise 4%. I'm like, great,
Okay,
you
so you
just
broke
got
even.
inflation.
So now you can afford the gallon of milk that just went up 40 cents.
Yeah, and
Yes.
I think the third like main thing with negotiation is when you know your numbers, like your own plan, you'll get more confidence to like ask for the more money because you know that even if you had another $500 or $200, it would help a lot. But be smart about it. You know, prepare for it. Ask when for a time to just sit down for a review with your boss. You know, go in there and deliver your silver platter, meaning here are all the things that I bring value.
Yeah, know
you
your
know?
worth, right?
You know, as a boss, if someone comes to me and says, look, I want to help grow the company. Here's what I've done in the last year to bring more revenue in. And I want to be able to execute at my job better so that you are like, making more money as a business. And I'm like, yeah, let's do it. But if you're just like, give me more money, I'm like, no,
Right.
So you got to like
Totally.
understand the other party and where they're coming from. But honestly, you got to just get in the habit of doing it because it's uncomfortable. And I think a lot of people, like I have so many friends in corporate and they say, oh, but no one else is asking. I'm like, yeah, because everybody else is following that.
Totally.
That like robotic.
Yes,
And it
out of
takes
fear.
courage to say, hey, I actually want more and I deserve more. And even if you get told no, which will happen, just hang in there.
And just remember, everybody who's listening to this, corporate profits are up. Worker wages have
Are
been
down.
stagnant
Yes.
and down for the last 30 years. So don't go to your boss. When you walk into that office of your boss, remember, they're doing just fine. And the bank accounts of their company statistically are doing fine. So I think that's an important thing to let people know is like, don't be afraid to ask for the raise because the chances are if your company is successful that their amount that they can pay you has gone up over the last 10 years.
And
We just know
timing
that.
is
Yes.
everything. Don't ask at the wrong time. And if you
Right.
do ask at the wrong time, then schedule in your calendar to then go back and ask when in
So
appropriate.
what's a good time to ask for a
Well,
raise?
I would just say don't go in there. I don't know if there's like the magic formula, but don't go in there when it's like deadlines and
Right.
Oh, yeah.
stressed and you're working on a big project and like your boss is like concerned about all the cash flow going out and you're like, hey, I want more money too.
Yeah, and I think doing your job as well as possible is also
Yeah.
a good thing. Like knowing how good you are. If you're the best at your job and you know that you're unreplaceable and what you bring to the table, that's your leverage point right there. Like you're not going to fire me because this company would be in shambles without me. Like
Well,
if
the
you're
other-
replaceable, then you
Well,
might.
I think the other point that I wanted to bring up is that if you have your cushion
Yeah, I was
in
just gonna
place,
say that.
you can afford to
then
take the
you
risk.
can afford to take the risk. So you go
like
in with
that.
a different level of confidence. Like you go in with the
Exactly, Shar.
mindset, look, I got 3 to 6 months in the bank.
Right.
What are y'all gonna do for me?
I'm ready to
Right.
walk.
I'm ready to walk. That's just like the person who goes to get a job that already has one.
Exactly.
So
We just
you go
helped
in-
one of our clients do just that. I mean, I helped them a lot, with negotiation, but one of them in particular, I was like, oh my God, you haven't asked for a raise in so many years. You're undervalued. She'd been undervalued for years. She felt it. And I said, look, you're in a financial position. You can leave this job. If they don't give it to you, you have nothing to lose right now.
Right.
Yeah.
Like, just go. And then guess what? She went and got it, and then it was like, and then she was like, oh my God, I can't believe
You
it
waited
took me
all
this
the time.
long. Yeah.
No, that's awesome.
Yeah.
That's awesome.
Okay, I think we have time for another question.
Yeah, one more.
I have savings, my investment accounts, a home. What else should I be thinking about?
Yeah, so a lot of times this is where we say, keep going,
Yes.
So if you have your savings, your home, your investment account, you might be thinking, great, I just want to enjoy this for a little bit,
season.
and that's just totally fine. But if you have more cash flow to save, we would say open up another brokerage account. If you're already maxing out your retirement accounts, keep investing
Exactly.
or buy another property if that's something that you're interested in. You can buy a property and rent it out. Even if you don't want to deal with all that, you can hire a property manager. We encourage people, especially women. I find that okay, come on, keep going or
Right.
invest in a business or something. Cause now it could be fun. It's like, okay, this is a game. If you see money as a game, it's nice to coast and enjoy the fruits of your labor, but then also it's nice to get those challenges and learn something new and
Yeah.
embark on your next endeavor.
That's so cool. Well, Brittney, you know what? The rest of the questions here will be answered on your webinar.
On the webinar.
So people need to go to that webinar.
Check
Please
her
tell
out.
us more about the webinar and how people can sign up and all of that before we cut out.
Yep. So April 22nd, 5 p.m. Pacific Standard Time. The link will be below to register.
Yes.
It's all about creating massive money breakthroughs. I'm going to give 5 tangible, practical things you can do to create breakthroughs in your financial life right now. It doesn't mean when you have the million or 10 million in the bank. No, literally right now. So we'll talk about
Exactly.
budgeting, investing, and all these different parts of financial planning, but then also how do you see those mindset shifts so these things are long lasting. We're all about long lasting. To me, if it's not long lasting, it's not real. We can have quick fixes in your money life, but that's not what we're here for. We're not here for band-aids. We want real
Exactly.
Sustainable shifts.
And also, this is a chance to ask all the questions because it's going to be live, so you could tune in. I'm going to be teaching and then answering all the questions. So
I love
definitely register. It's free.
Yay. Well, thank you again for coming on the show. You've been amazing, as usual.
Thank you.
And
Absolutely.
you promised to come back.
Oh, guys, I'm going to stalk you until I come back.
You got it.
Well, I'm Miss Charline.
And I am DJ Bander.
And we're on Dash
Talk
X. Thank you for listening. We're on Tuesdays at noon.
That's right.
We'll see you next week.
Thank you for watching, everyone. Be sure to find us on Instagram at The Finance Bunch and listen to us every Tuesday on Dash Talk X.